Hi guys, this is Jan for Chess24. This video I'm going to have a look at the game from the Women's World Championship between Mariya Muzychuk and Koneru Humpy, played in the first round of the quarterfinals. Let's first have a look at the event, because I'm always confused by it. It's a knockout World Championship. Every other year it's a knockout tournament that determines the Women's World Champion. And then there is a match in the years where we have no knockout tournament between the winner of said knockout tournament, the world champion, and the winner of the Grand Prix, if I'm informed correctly. What's interesting about this knockout world championship is that the reigning world champion, Hu Yifan, who's also the #1 in the women's rating list, is not participating. She played a tournament in Hawaii instead, partly because the dates were announced a bit late for her taste, as far as I heard, but also, I guess, because she already has the right to challenge or to play the match against whoever emerges from this tournament as a new champion and reclaim her title should she win that match. With Hu Yifan missing and, of course, Judith Polgar missing, who retired from competitive chess and who has never participated in women's events in the first place, the #1 seed is Koneru Humpy from India, who's been on a tear. She won her 6 games, scored 6 out of 6, and in the quarterfinals she's dealing with Mariya Muzychuk. Here we see the players on the picture. Mariya Muzychuk is the #12 in the world, and interestingly, she's not the highest rated player in her family, because her sister Anna Muzychuk is the #5 in the world, and she's also still left in the event. So both sisters still in there with a shot to become the new women's world champion. Let's have a look at the game between Mariya Muzychuk and Koneru Humpy. Koneru, slightly higher rated, won her 6 games, but Mariya Muzychuk is a world-class player with 25-26 rating. Starts with a move 1 e4. Humpy goes e5, very solid positional style that she plays. Knight f3, knight c6. And Mariya Muzychuk decides on the move 3 d4, the Scottish game. Of course, bishop b5 will always be the more popular move, but here, well, first of all, no one really knows what to do against knight f6, or a6 for that matter. So people are getting a bit tired of it, and Muzychuk prefers to take her chances with the Scottish in this game. d4, e4, knight d4, bishop c5. My favorite move here is the move knight f6, but bishop c5 is just as popular. Both are absolute main lines. This is a position where white faces a serious choice already. The center of debates recently has been the move knight to b3, for example, the spectacular game Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Magnus Carlsen. Bishop b6, knight c3, with very complicated play. Another alternative is the move knight takes c6, when typically black goes queen f6, threatening checkmate. Now queen f3, this is a popular line. But Mariya Muzychuk chooses a third path, the old main line, I believe is fair to say, the move bishop to e3, arguably the most natural move, just defending the knight. Also threatening to win a piece with knight takes c6, so black goes queen f6, this is the main move, parrying the threat and once again attacking d4. c3, knight ge7, it's been seen many times. It's not considered to be all that scary for black. The theoretical debates here used to be centered around bishop c4, I think knight e5, bishop e2, queen g6, but it has turned out that black is doing quite well here, so white hasn't been doing that much, and instead Mariya Muzychuk plays the move g3, which looks quite humble as well, just intending to go bishop g2 and get a bit of a grip on the center. However, it's black to move, and black is in time here to play the move d5, which Humpy played, I think, quite quickly, so g3 probably did not come as a surprise, maybe was meant as a surprise weapon. It's not that common a move. d5, bishop g2, d takes e4. White in no rush to recapture on e4. Castles first, this pawn does not run away. Black does well not to try to defend it, but to also castle. Now, once again, the idea is not bishop takes e4 when black, after, let's say, bishop d4, cd, bishop f5 would already be better, but instead to develop the knight and use this to capture on e4. All of this is well-known theory. The problem for white is, even if after she manages to recapture the pawn, The pawn structure is symmetrical, the black pieces are fairly well developed, so I don't think this is a very serious try to get an advantage. But you gotta try something, and that's what Mariya Muzychuk chose for this game. Knight d2. Humpy plays, once again, what I consider the best move, bishop b6, just putting this bishop on a safe square and sidestepping. Knight takes e4 with a double attack. And here Muzychuk played the move rook to e1, which once again delays recapturing on e4, tries to improve the pieces a little bit. I'm not sure it's necessary. I don't think it changes the assessment. I think the position is equal in either case. But to my mind, knight takes e4 is a bit more critical. I once had a game here with black against Borki Predojevic a long time ago, queen to g6, and white played this little tricky move, knight to c5. When the idea is after bishop c5, there is knight takes c6, and the black pieces are a bit overloaded, and white is better. Instead, after knight c5, I think I took on d4, bishop d4, knight c6, and the position remains more or less equal, so it's not that scary a line either. Neither is rook e1 though. Humpy took on d4 with the knight, which is very logical when it's not white's idea to recapture on d4, but now it's finally time to cash in and go knight takes e4, an intermediate move, winning this pawn back and taking the piece next move. Here Humpy played queen to f5, which surprised me a little bit. I thought queen g6 was more normal move in a way, but it has queen f5 has advantages as well. I think both are perfectly fine. Queen g6, bishop d4, knight c6 also seems to lead to an equal position. But with the queen on f5, one point is that after bishop takes d4, knight c6, which happened in the game, the c5 square is under control, which it wouldn't be with a queen on g6. Having said that, knight c5 is still a possible move, and actually the first move the engine suggests here. However, it does not give white any advantage. The tricky point is after bishop takes c5 to play bishop e4, winning the piece back because the queen can't stay in touch with his bishop. Queen g5 is possible, but then h4, queen e7, and queen h5 would finally recapture the piece. So it kind of works, but doesn't lead to a white edge, because after bishop e4, the simplest way to solve the problem is knight takes d4. When white after bishop f5, knight f5 would have a queen against 3 healthy pieces, which is not a very good deal. So instead, Mariya Muzychuk, who was probably familiar with this line and this position, decided not to go for knight c5, but instead took on b6, a takes b6, when we have, well, more or less symmetrical pawn structure. It's not fully symmetrical, and black can use that this a2 pawn is very weak, but white has her own play as well, which looks a bit far away, but it's a long-term plan first introduced, I believe, by Ivanchuk in a game against Leko to attack on the king side. She wants to go f4, h... Oops, sorry. Wrong arrow. f4, h3, g4, and expand here. Easier said than done, but that is the plan, and therefore Mariya Muzychuk played f4 here. Bishop e6, quite logical, targeting the a2 pawn ASAP. And white went for b3. I'm not sure I like the move b3. No matter what you're going to do, it's going to leave some weaknesses. a3 it's also a problem because later knight a5 could target these squares. Maybe a4 is the best way to keep this a pawn. But b3 is of course also possible, and arguably gives more chances to counterattack later on the king side. For now, I quite like black's position, I have to say. It looks fundamentally sound. b3 has a problem that it weakens this a3 square, which black would very much like to use to put a rook there, double rooks, and also weakens the c3 pawn, which can be a problem in some lines after queen c5 and queen takes c3. So at the moment, white is threatening knight g5, therefore rook a3, for example, wouldn't be a good idea. And Humpy very sensibly plays a move h6, both creating a luft for the king and stopping knight g5 for good. Mariya Muzychuk continues with her plan, which, as mentioned before, is quite slow, but can be effective if it materializes. h3, queen d2 to protect f4, g4, and then either f5 or g5, getting an attack on the king side. In the meantime, black will and does counterattack on the queen side, rook a3, queen d2, and queen to a5. Very good move, targeting this a2 pawn and also directly threatening bishop takes b3. Therefore, for example, g4 is not possible. It would run into bishop takes b3. White has to do something I'm sure she would have preferred not to do, which is loosen her queen side further. Just play the move b4 to, well, stop the threat of bishop takes b3 and kick this queen away from the very good outpost it had on a5. Black went queen a4, queen a8 is just as possible. Queen a4 is fine, just keeping the attack on the a2 pawn, which can't really be saved any longer. So Mariya Muzychuk just continued with her plan. Said, okay, you can have this one pawn on the queen side. I'll try to checkmate you on the king side. Humpy once again, I think correctly, decided to play the intermediate move rook d8, seizing the open file and attacking the queen. Rook takes a2 was possible. After rook takes a2, queen takes a2. Looks like white is nothing better than the move f5, which seems like it gives enough play to kind of survive with white. As I said, I don't think this whole line and the plan is very dangerous for black. Bishop d5 here, for example. White has the cute little tactic, queen d5, knight f6, check, gf, bishop takes d5. And here, because of the active pieces and the strong bishop, there is enough compensation for the pawn and the position is most likely equal. Instead, Humpy played the more ambitious rook to d8, queen to f2. Not a bad square for the queen, getting closer to the king side. Now it's time to cash in, so she took on a2, rook takes, Here the next move surprised me a little bit, bishop takes a2, queen takes a2 looks more natural to my mind at first. However, it would only force the white queen to go to a better square, queen g3. Once again, maybe threatening f5, maybe intending g5 as well. And it turns out that white has full compensation for the pawn here, actually, and the position is not so easy to play for black. So instead, she correctly took with the bishop on a2, which first of all ensures that f5 no longer is coming with tempo, and it also keeps control of the d1 square, which can be a very important defensive resource, which we're going to see later to play rook d1, exchanging rooks. The game continued with the move b5. This was a surprise for me, at least. It's a bit of a gamble, in my opinion. Before white goes about her kingside attack, she's trying to make black lose a bit more time and put this knight on a passive square where it's far away from the kingside. Queen takes b5, of course, is impossible because of queen takes a2. b5 it's an ugly move positionally, weakening the structure further, but white is not trying to win this game on the queen side anyway, so she thinks she might as well try this. And the gamble, I think it worked, because Humpy played knight a7, which I believe is a mistake. It's very ambitious, just trying to pick up that pawn and win the game, but it also puts the knight very far away from the king side, and we can see all the black pieces kind of abandoned her monarch on g8, which could cause trouble. I don't think white is winning here yet, or better even, but the position can become very tricky to defend after the move g5, which happened in the game. We'll get to that in a second. In order to avoid that, I believe the move that had to be played, of course, my opinion is informed by my engine, as it tends to be, is the move knight to e7, bringing this knight closer to the king, helping as a defender. Maybe what Humpy disliked was the move knight f6 check, but then after g f6, rook takes e7, rook d1, king h2, bishop to d5. Turns out that the white king is every bit as weak as the black king. The black pieces are quite active and working together. So it would be white who would have to fight for a draw here. So knight 7 is also other tries like f5, but it seems like black is quite well coordinated and not in any particular trouble here. Arguably has the better position. Therefore, b5 was a bit of a gamble that the knight would not go to e7. Maybe white should have gone for g5 immediately, trying to mix it up over there, or for a preparatory move like king to h2. Still, b5 happened in the game and knight a7 was played. The most ambitious move, trying to capture this pawn, but leaving the king alone. That was exploited by going g5, correct, trying to open the position on the king side ASAP. H takes g5, and the slightly surprising knight takes g5. Once again, not really caring about her pawn structure, but instead going for active pieces. We see the white pawns are quite ugly there, all over the place, but the white pieces are very active, very well coordinated. And white is starting to have some serious threats. Queen h4, okay, enough. Colors, queen h4, the immediate one, intending queen h7 and queen h8 mate, which turns out is not so easy to parry. And actually black only had one way to stay in the game here. The move rook to d1. I've mentioned this earlier, this defensive resource trying to exchange rooks. When the position still seems to be balanced, even though black has to be very careful. For example, queen h4, threatening mate again. Rook takes e1, queen takes e1, threatening mate on e8 this time. That can be stopped by queen takes b5, but then the tactics aren't over. Queen d2 would happen, attacking this bishop and threatening queen d8 with checkmate. So a lot of tricks in the position. Probably the best black had was to play the move queen to a3 here, preparing to answer queen e8 with queen f8 when the position appears to be equal. At least the computer gives his usual opinion of 0-0 after some line like this. Don't ask me why bishop c4. The computer says this is an equal position. Instead, Koneru Humpy, who had won her first six games in the tournament, committed a rare error in this position. She played the move f6, which looks natural enough. It's defending against queen h4, but I believe she missed the next white move, which is a very, very pretty move, exploiting the fact that even though f6 gave the black king some breathing space, there is still a looming checkmate, a back rank mate with rook e8 should this rook leave the back rank. And that was exploited with the move queen to d2, very pretty move. Rook takes d2, runs into rook e8 checkmate, no can do. And the problem is that queen d2 also threatens queen takes d8, so this rook has to move, which it did after rook f8, but that abandons another crucial square, the d5 square. And the white pieces with tempo join the attack, bishop d5 check. And it turns out there is already no more defense for black. Bishop takes d5, natural move was played in the game. King h8 would not have helped one bit. Black can't avoid checkmate after the next pretty little queen move, queen to e1, threatening queen h5 checkmate. If you stop that with g6, queen e7 is absolutely lethal, finishing the game. So instead, after bishop d5, black had to take, bishop takes, queen takes, king to h8. And here we see a variation of the tactic we already see with queen to d2, fake queen sacrifice, exploiting the weakened back rank that black has. And this move is already the last move of the game. Queen to f7, winning on the spot, and the number one seed, Koneru Humpy, had to resign here and lost her first game in the tournament. After queen f7, there's just no defense. You can't take because of rook e8 checkmate. You can't really go anywhere because, well, of either queen h5, queen h7, or rook e8. And the last try, f takes g5, also lose on the spot due to queen f8, king h7, queen f5, and checkmate is to follow shortly in 3 moves. Let's put it on the board. More than one way to do it. Rook e7, and king h6, queen g5, for example. It's a nice game by Mariya Muzychuk. Played a line that doesn't look very dangerous, and the game, well, was probably strategically balanced with white taking some of the risks, especially with b5. But there were always counter chances, and when the moment arrived with f6, the one clear mistake that black made queen to d2, all of a sudden the game was already over. And that, of course, means that Koneru Humpy is going to have to win with the white pieces in the rematch in the second round of the quarterfinals to stay in the tournament, which is really heating up. There's 8 players left. To conclude this video, let's have a brief look, if I manage, at the other pairings and results. Here we are. Mariya Muzychuk beating Koneru Humpy, as we've seen. Mary Arabidze, the surprise of the tournament, frankly. I'd never heard of her before this tournament. Rated 23-74. She knocked out some favorites already. Drew with Harika Dronavalli, the Indian number 2. India still has 2 very strong players in the field, in the running. I believe, last remaining Russian player, Natalia Pogonina, lost to the last remaining Chinese player, Zhao Zhue, and Pia Kramling from Sweden drew against Anna Muzychuk, the sister of Mariya Muzychuk, also one of the top female players in the world. So it's gonna stay exciting. There's only 8 players left. Check into the tournament on Chess24 if you want to follow it. Thank you for the attention. I'll keep following it more intensively from now on. And I'll see you guys in the next video, whatever that is about. Thanks for watching. See you then. Bye-bye.